Hi guys, in this video I'm going to share with you how to do a cranial release. And why would you want to know how to do a cranial release? Well, because it's a great technique for headaches, migraines, sinus congestion, jaw dysfunction like jaw pain, jaw clicking, tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears, and so much more. I'm Dr. Karin Drummond, owner of Drummond Chiropractic, and as always, before you follow any advice from any video, check with your healthcare provider to make sure it's appropriate for your specific condition, and hopefully that's one of us here at Drummond Chiropractic. If you like our content, please let us know by clicking the like button. If you would like to see more, click subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Write them down in the comments below. So I'm going to be showing you how to do some cranial release, but before I do, let me explain why cranial movement is important so you understand better how it works. Your skull is made up of many flat bones. It's like a jigsaw puzzle put together to form a hard surface to protect your delicate brain. I mean, your brain is a bundle of sensitive nerves. It can't handle pressure, let alone blunt trauma. So your skull is like a helmet for your brain. An interesting fact is that the brain itself cannot feel pain. There's no pain receptors inside the brain. But the skin of the brain, the dura mater, is very sensitive to just the slightest pressure. Anyone who suffers with migraine headaches can attest to the severity of the pain when the dura mater is injured or under any kind of pressure. And this is why some people, when they exercise, get exercise-induced headaches because the increase in blood pressure puts pressure in their brain. Or when there's a change in weather, which changes the barometric pressure outside the body, some people will get migraine headaches with the change of weather. So why doesn't everybody get a headache whenever there's a barometric pressure change or a blood pressure change? I find that a more rigid skull is more sensitive to these kinds of pressure changes. And when you get a cranial release, if it doesn't get rid of the headache completely, it at least alleviates it. Now, medically speaking, the flat bones in your skull are interlocked together, and the joints between these flat bones are labeled as immovable because there's no muscle designed to move them. Like an elbow has muscles designed to move your arm. In the cranium, since there's no muscles designed to move these joints, they were labeled immovable. But this is often misunderstood as these bones are literally fused together, and that simply isn't true. When you work with skulls, you can feel the mobility of the cranial bones. So if you suffer from migraines, chances are you have a rigid skull. If you have jaw dysfunction, it might be pulling on your skull aberrantly, leading you to a more rigid skull. Or if you have tinnitus, ringing in the ear, loosening up the skull might help because the structures of your ear that cause tinnitus are deep inside your skull, and nerves, remember, don't like being under pressure. So if the skull is rigid, that might be putting pressure on the nerve supplying the inner ear or the structures of the inner ear, resulting in tinnitus. If you want to learn more or dive deeper into this topic, check out my website, drummondchiropractic.com, under conditions, or post your question in the comments below. So now you know about the importance of the mobility of the bones in your skull. Let's teach you how to move them. But before I do, there's just a little bit of anatomy you need to learn. There's 22 bones in the skull, but luckily you only need to know 8, and you don't even have to remember their names, just what to do with them. The 8 main bones are your frontal bone, your parietal bone, your temporal bone, your occipital bone, your sphenoid bone. Now this one I have to pause. It's a bone that goes through the skull behind the eyes, and behind the eyes there's the seat of the sphenoid bone where the pituitary gland sits, and that is the master gland of the entire body. Can you see if there's rigidity in your skull putting pressure on that region, how that can affect your body systemically? So this bone I find is very important to keep loose and mobile for the health of your entire body. You also have your zygomatic, your nasal, and your maxilla. I'll just quickly add one more bone, the ethmoid bone. It's a cube-shaped bone between the eyes, behind the nasal cavity, and it has a deep sinus in there. So as you're doing this cranial release, you're also going to help relieve pressure of the ethmoid bone, which is a cause of a lot of those deep frontal pains with the sinus congestion. I mean, a lot of people know about the frontal sinuses, but there is a deeper one. And also that sphenoid bone I keep talking about, that also has sinuses in it as well. So that's why it's really important to keep these structures just nice and loose so the pressure can drain and take the pressure off the brain and help the health of the whole entire body. So let's show you how to wiggle the bones of your skull. Let's start with your right hand on your right cheekbone, that's the zygomatic bone, and put your left hand on the frontal bone. And you just squeeze your hands together. You should feel a little bit of a wiggle. Move your hand back onto the parietal area and give it a squeeze. Move your hand down to the temporal region. You should be above your ear now. I do at least 3 squeezes, no more than 5. And then behind your orbital, remember that sphenoid bone, the wing of it, you want to be in front of your ear but behind your eye. You should be on it and give that a squeeze. Remember, that's the really important one. And then you switch sides. Now your left hand is on your cheekbone on the left hand side. Your right hand goes on the frontal bone, give that a squeeze. Back to the parietal bone, down closer to the ear, which should be on your temporal bone now, and then forward onto the sphenoid bone. And then interlace your fingers, put them behind your head. You should be on your occipital bone. Tuck your chin, makes for a good stretch for the neck. Push your hands up as you bring your head back, and then wiggle your head side to side. That should move the posterior elements of your skull. You should feel your sinuses draining by now. And then you put your left hand on your frontal bone, your right hand on your parietal bone, give that a squeeze. Go down to your temporal bone, and then again your sphenoid bone. And then switch. Frontal bone, parietal bone, temporal bone, and then the sphenoid bone. And then for the very front of your skull, you want to put your thumb up onto your orbital part of your frontal bone, and then the finger of the opposite hand on the same size nasal bone. You know you're on the nasal bone when you're on your nose, but on the hard part of your nose, not the soft part of your nose. And you want to pull them apart. And again, you don't be squishing or hurting your skin. You want to make sure you're moving the bone. And then you move down a little bit so that you're on the maxilla part. And then you move over to the zygomatic part. You should feel movement with that. And you switch on the other side. So the orbital, the nasal, pull them apart, go to the maxilla, push down on the maxilla, up on the orbital, and then over to that cheekbone, the zygomatic, and push that off to the side as you push the orbital bone in. And then you should feel, again, your sinuses should just be really feeling clear, easier to breathe. It might even be dripping, just blow it out. Don't swallow it, get that yuck out of your system. And your headache should be gone. Hopefully if you have tinnitus, that's helped your tinnitus. And again, check with your healthcare provider and make sure that this is appropriate for your specific condition. I hope this has been helpful, and until next time, stay well.